while there is grief all over among the families, there is anger in the valley. And that anger has led, interestingly, to a kind of political solidarity that we haven't seen. Parties that have been fierce opponents have now come together. The People's Democratic Party, taking on the National Conference in Srinagar and the Modi government in Delhi, has now rallied behind both and in fact called the Jammu Bandh last week. Jammu and the Srinagar Bandh against what happened in Baisaran. I am joined by the PDP leader, Iltija Mufti, part of the Gen Next of her party. Appreciate your joining us, Iltija. As you said, not a great time to be talking to each other, given what's happened.
Yes.
But is there a sense that this terrible incident, terrible attack in Baisaran will be a wake-up call for all Kashmiri politicians and Kashmiris to set apart all your differences with the center, amongst yourself, and come together in solidarity given what's happened?
You know, I don't think if wake-up call is the right way to put it. I think for us, we've seen so much violence in the past 35 years. We've all suffered. So when something like this happened, you saw there was a spontaneous coming out. People observed a shutdown. Mehbooba ji first called, you know, there was a shutdown in Jammu, and then Mehbooba ji called for a similar shutdown in Kashmir. And honestly, Rajdeep, the solidarity that you see, the shock that you see, you know, the people of Jammu and Kashmir mourning with the rest of the country, you know, in this hour of grief, is a very spontaneous reaction that's come about. Frankly, we didn't need such, you know, a horrific incident to happen for us to come together. And like I said, for the first time, I think in a long time, the people of Jammu and Kashmir are mourning with the rest of the country. You know, it's an incident that's rattled all of us, and it's absolutely horrific. You know, the way these innocent tourists were gunned down, and that also in a popular, you know, tourist destination that is relatively safer like Pahalgam. So it's come as a moment of shock. And you saw the people of Kashmir express their solidarity and come out in such, you know, massive numbers, and they observed a shutdown. This is something that they did on their own. And you didn't just have political parties, mind you. It wasn't just about the PDP NC. You also had Mirwais Saab, you know, using his pulpit to condemn this attack, you know, to call for people to observe a shutdown. So you had people cutting across political, religious, socio, you know, economic lines coming together to condemn this barbaric incident.
You know, it's interesting because all these years of coming to Kashmir, the word I've always heard here is alienation. People are alienated from Delhi. This time, the word is a word, but anger. People are angry, not with Delhi this time, but angry with those who are running these terror factories, including in Pakistan.
Yeah.
Is there a clarity on that? I don't hear the P word as often, but I certainly hear the T word, the terror. Is there a clarity now that enough is enough? And that for much too long, Kashmiris have, in a sense, allowed or been victims in their own way of these terror factories emanating out of Pakistan?
I think, honestly, every time an incident like this happens, it's so normal for the media or even people in, you know, India, in the rest of the country to kind of like conflate Kashmiris with militants or to see us as terror sympathizers or people who condone terrorism. We don't. And I feel so bad that every time I come on a show after an incident like this, I have to prove that I'm not even Indian. I have to prove that I'm human. मुझे अपने इंसान होने का सबूत देना पड़ता है. Am I not human, Rajdeep? Are you not human? Are we not humane enough? When something like this happens and you see the way they were gunned down, of course I'm going to condemn it. Of course it's an act of terror. Why do I even have to be asked, do you condemn this incident? Of course we condemn this incident. And whoever is responsible for this, whoever is the perpetrator, they must be taken to task.
Whether they are locals or whether they are people from Pakistan, any and every one has to be punished, unequivocal on that, without ifs and buts. The reason I'm asking you that is, in the past there's been a sense that Kashmiris have been wary of coming out on the street. How far do we go in taking on terror? And as a result, terror has grown. Kashmiris have got demonized, not just in the valley, but outside, have got vilified and said you're terror sympathizers. We've seen some students in some parts also being targeted. Will that change? Is there a sense, I mean, obviously you can't put all the burden on Kashmiris. We in the rest of the country have also to rise to the occasion. But is there a sense that Kashmiris need to respond very differently now.
Rajdeep, Kashmiris showed you their response 2 days after the attack happened. We saw how Lal Chowk, Mehbooba ji carried out a protest, and you saw people were literally thronging Lal Chowk because they wanted to show their solidarity. Kashmiris have taken the first step by denouncing this terror attack, by saying not in my name. As Kashmiris, we stand against terror. We stand against any form of terrorism. Now,
particularly targeted attacks against Hindus in this manner.
Absolutely.
But in 1990, you will recall when Kashmiri Pandits, the exodus took place.
Give me a moment to finish.
Yes.
Kashmiris took the first step by denouncing this attack, by condemning it, and there was absolutely no ambiguity. Now it is for the rest of the country, it is for the government of India to take the lead. The next step is something that they have to take. You've seen in the past 2 days how there's been a vilification of Kashmiris, whether it's Kashmiri students. There are Kashmiri girls who were assaulted in Jamia Millia University. There was a Kashmiri shawl vendor who was heckled, who was abused by Bajrang Dal goons in Uttarakhand. So I have to say that I'm very disappointed by the rest of the country, because for them, it's very easy to confuse us with militants. It's very easy to paint us all with the broad stroke of terrorism. कि आप कश्मीरी हैं तो आप उग्रवाद, आप आतंकवादी होंगे. But we are the ones who protested. We are the ones who protested. But somehow the media is demonizing us. The media is vilifying us. And because of that constant simmering, of tension, what is happening is that Kashmiris throughout the country are being hounded. They're being heckled. Their jobs are being snatched. We saw how even students are being attacked. So frankly, I feel very disappointed. We can time travel. Absolutely, we can go back to the 1990s. I know you're going to bring up the Pandit exodus. That's what you're coming to.
No, I was only saying that when that happened, there was a sense that Kashmiris did not stand up and say not in my name. Today they are. And
that's not true, Rajdeep. That's not true.
Okay.
I don't want to cheapen lives, but for every Pandit, every minority person who was killed, you had, an equal number of Kashmiri Muslims who were gunned down. You cannot say, Rajdeep, terrorism is not something that will affect people, कि Hindu hai to Muslim ko nahi karega. Even we have lost so many lives here, Rajdeep. Let's not give it a communal angle, Let's not say that.
That's what Pakistan wants to do, obviously. That's what the terrorists want to do. But I want to ask you this in conclusion, because what I've also seen is symbols of hope. I saw Maharashtrians and Gujaratis, today is Maharashtra Day, Gujarat Day, out there in Pahalgam, still in their resorts. Very few of them.
You miss, the naval officer whose wife was unfortunately widowed. She made a very strong plea on camera today, where she urged the citizens of India not to punish, not to collectively punish Kashmiri Muslims and Kashmiris.
I know you're saying that because I was in Bij Bihara also today, where remember the house of one of the suspected terrorist mastermind, Adil, was blown up. By the security agency. So there's a sense of retribution going on there as well.
Disproportionate retribution. Because if you look at the number of houses that were razed in Muran, Pulwama last week, along with one house of the suspected militant's family, 15-20 houses were razed to dust. You had one, patriarch of the family crying before the camera, talking about how he had saved up money for, his daughter's marriage. So why are Kashmiris being collectively punished? They've been collectively punished since 2019.
So what you're saying is if the healing touch has to take place, and it's desperately needed, it has to take place from both sides. And therefore Kashmiris will have to speak out in one voice, and so does the rest of the country. And that's how we've got to find a way forward.
The cycle of mutual suspicion, Kashmiris do not, there's a mistrust between Kashmir and the rest of the India. And it works both ways. So this cycle, this vicious, unending cycle of mutual suspicion, it has to stop. And I would urge the people, of this country that if you want somebody, who exemplifies Kashmir, it is Adil Shah, who laid down his life protecting tourists. It is Adil Shah who exemplifies Kashmiriyat, not just Kashmiriyat, but Insaniyat as well. He has served as the perfect example of Kashmiriyat and humanity. So don't look at us through the lens of these terrorists who came in and who were the perpetrators of this terror attack. Look at us through the lens of an Adil Shah who laid down his life.
I'm going to leave it there, Iltija Mufti. It's good to have you on the show. As I said, not the right time, but perhaps at least the right words that are being used that hopefully will echo. So thank you very much
Thank you for
for
having
joining
me.
me.